your story.
I know. Hi, I'm Stacy Shirvinski, and this is my husband, Frank Shirvinski.
Hello.
And as you know, we're starting a new podcast called Trail Encounters, and we want this to be a little bit different than other podcasts. And so, one of the first things we wanted to do is just kind of tell you our story and our background, and give you some history about who we are and what we'd like to accomplish with this.
Yeah, one of the things we're going to be doing with this podcast is a couple things. One is we're going to be interviewing folks that have tremendous stories of faith in their local communities. We want to hear from people like us, like you, and what is being done for God's kingdom each and every day. But then also to answer your questions. So some folks have questions that they want to have answered, and we'll be here to help you with those questions and do the best we can to give you interesting answers and hopefully helpful answers. The other thing we want to do is this podcast right now today is get to know us. So who are we? You'll also be hearing in our background two feisty little Aussies who like to have some fun. So they may make an appearance every now and again. So with that, Stacy, why don't you tell us a little bit about us?
Well, we met at Purdue. It was an interesting story. Frank has a very different take on how we actually met than I do.
I have a true story. She has a different story.
Do not.
Yeah. Okay.
But essentially, we were both working at the time. I was working at a bar, and he was working at a, what do you call it, like a greasy spoon?
Well, I was bouncing at a bar in the evenings, and then I'd get off work at 2 a.m, and I'd go work at basically kind of like a Waffle House kind of place, like a local Waffle House, greasy spoon. People eat breakfast in the morning.
It's called Tri-Chi. We were at Purdue, by the way.
We were at Purdue, yeah. And Stacy was there eating breakfast at like 3 or 4 in the. She hadn't got off work. And I saw her, and I was like, I told a buddy of mine, I'm like, I'm marrying her. I did. I didn't talk to her.
No, he didn't. He was very creepy. And all I saw was somebody like this just staring very intently at me.
I was a bouncer. That's the bouncer stance.
It was weird.
Anyway,
and I kept thinking, what? Do I have food in my teeth? What? Why is he staring at me?
Well, I finally got her number from a buddy of mine. We worked out together, and so I kind of tortured him at the gym to get her number. Mm-hmm. I called her, which was kind of unlike me. But I called her, and as soon as I called her, got on the phone, she ran right to my house.
So I was out jogging, and I told him I might stop by since that was actually on my route.
How did you get home?
Oh, that doesn't matter.
I drove her.
I was out.
So if she ran to my house and I drove her home, that means you ran to see me.
Whatever makes you feel better.
And you married me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did.
So after that, I graduated from Purdue with a degree in aerospace engineering. We moved to Los Angeles, where Stacy worked for Team One Advertising, and I worked for Hughes Aircraft Company designing Geocom satellites, which was pretty exciting. After a couple of years there, we decided we wanted to start a family, and so we moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where I took a job as a VP of engineering. And
I was working at UPS corporate
That's
there,
right.
And we had our first child, Abigail, who was also part of Purpose Press. She was basically helped get this started.
Yep.
Her vision along with ours, and so you'll get to meet her in one of our interviews. But so when we were in Georgia, we both had these really great jobs that we loved. But Frank really started wanting to know more about the Bible. We had gone back to church, and we both kind of grew up with the church, but we weren't really committed until later on, and we just wanted to learn more. Well, especially him. He, me, I would just go to classes. Well, he goes back to school.
Yeah, so I kept on hearing things in sermons, and I didn't know for myself, and I had questions. And so what I began to do was go to take classes at a local Bible college kind of close to my work, and began to like, oh, there's some really great stuff out there. These great theology, there's great, learning languages, and there's so much information that I really wanted to know for myself. And so at that point, I went to Stacy and said, hey, I think I want to go to seminary. And she was like,
say what?
Yeah.
I actually think I asked you, I said, couldn't you be like a deacon or an elder or something?
And anyway, we decided to sell our home.
Well, you felt called by God to do this. So,
I did.
Yeah, which required us to sell our home, to move to Tennessee, give up our jobs, and do what you thought God needed us to do.
Do you want to tell them about the deal you made with God on the house?
I didn't make a deal with God. Let's just ask some questions. So it was interesting because, I'm thinking, well, if God is in this, then he will show us. So I was like, well, God, if you would really like us to go to Tennessee, then we had just bought this new home and there was a bunch of new homes being built and we needed to sell it for a certain amount of money in order to be able to pay off all of our bills because he was going to go from making, a really nice wage to making nothing because he's going to school. And we'd have to sell it in, 6 weeks?
Yeah, something like that.
So I was kind of like, okay, God, if you really are in this, then those are what we need to happen. And it's going to make me cry. It makes me cry every time. But on the very last day, in the very last hour, we sold the house for enough money to pay off everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't argue with God a whole lot anymore.
Yeah, that's true. So we moved to Tennessee. I went to school at Emmanuel School of Religion. Spent about 4 years there, getting a Master of Theology, a Master of Divinity there. After graduation, we moved back to Georgia, kind of the same time we left. And I had a job as an Associate Minister of Education at First Christian Church in Cumming, Georgia. And while I was there, I got a Master of Theology at Emory University, focusing on Old Testament and original languages of the Bible, Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, so forth. And then after that, I went to University of Georgia and did PhD work in historical linguistics. Again, and the whole purpose was, I felt like if I can get to the languages, then I can make my own decisions. I can make my own interpretations. And that really helped me because it's one thing to read a commentary or read someone else's opinion or hear a sermon. But for me, this is just me now, I needed to go back to the original sources as best as possible and really dig in. In fact, one of our first podcasts we're going to do is looking at the Bible. Is it trustworthy? And that was one of my big questions. It's like, well, how do I know that this book is something I can trust? And those who translated it are trustworthy and those kinds of questions.
Can I add one of the things that I thought was so funny? So the drive to University of Georgia and then to his work was there's an hour there and an hour there. And it was like a long route. So he had this big, do you remember this?
Yeah, I appreciate telling this.
Basically, what were they, cards?
Yeah, they're like index cards.
Index cards that he would drive and he would be testing his language skills. So he literally memorized words as he's driving these long commutes.
Mostly in traffic, just to be
It was
safe.
mostly in traffic.
Yeah.
He was being good.
There's a lot of traffic in Georgia.
Yeah.
So I got a lot of practice. But yeah, I do vocabulary quizzing while I was sitting in traffic. So made a good use of my time.
Well, and you learned a lot.
Yeah. And there are no podcasts like this one back then.
That's true.
All right. So after that, we got a call to come out to Scottsdale, Arizona, and for me to become lead pastor at a church here in Scottsdale. We did that for about 15 years or so. Stacy took on the role of children's pastor. What else?
Well, I started off as the youth minister. They needed someone to fill in, and I had not at all considered doing anything like that before. But, once I started really praying about it, I felt like God was leading me to do that. So I started off with the youth ministry, and then I ended up having children from birth, and then also college, which I had a lot of fun with the college students. I would teach their classes, and we really enjoyed that. But it was a lot. And so a little bit down the road, I had asked to be focusing on just the children. And so that's what I did for many years.
And then a few years into that, we decided to try to move the church more toward where there's a lot of money that goes into facilities, buildings, salaries, and so very little of the church money goes out of the church into doing ministry. So we, with a friend of mine, Nick Stavland, and us, we thought about putting together a program where we'd have businesses on the campus. So we had like 13 acres of property. So we started a CrossFit gym, a CrossFit Chaparral, which did really, really well. A couple of schools, including a charter school, and a coffee house that Stacy started called Andy's Coffee, from the ground up, right? Mm-hmm. And a great coffee shop. And the idea was those businesses would help fund the stuff, right? The property, the upkeep, and all that thing. And so we wanted to create that environment so that the church could do its job to send money to those who really needed it. And in that journey, I began to say, well, wait a minute, what about my salary? And so we moved from doing full-time ministry in the church world to doing tent-making ministry. So my last couple of years at the church, I went in my off hours, I got my POS license, became a flight instructor, and then eventually became an airline pilot with JSX Airlines, which lasted a little while. Then, of course, we had the events of the pandemic and so forth, where flights weren't flying. And so I went back and got a job with my old boss from 25 years ago, back at Hughes Aircraft Company, at a new company he started. And so now, and for the last 5 years, I have been a senior principal engineer who designs spacecraft, which has been fantastic. It's been great. And it's allowed me then, or allowed us really, to do some new work to help support churches and individuals. One thing I've learned over the years was that there weren't a lot of really good interactive small group materials that really encouraged small group leaders. So we wrote a series of books that are called, one book so far become a series. First is on the Gospel of Matthew. It's got a participant's guide, a leader's guide. And the idea is to encourage small group leaders to engage their small groups, but also to give them confidence to teach. And the other thing that we were working on is something called the Trail. And that's our big project right now, which helps folks go through the Bible in a year.
Or if you want to.
If they want to. You don't have to. You can take your time. But it has a podcast that goes with it called The Trail as well. But that podcast gives you insights into each of your daily readings. And that's kind of in the works. Stacy and I will do that together.
And one of the really great things about the Trail podcast is because of his background is, some days you'll get some history of what was going on. Some days you'll get more about how does it connect to other parts of the Bible. And it's just, it's not even that long. It's 7 to 15 minutes maybe. And it just gives you some insights that you won't get elsewhere.
And we'll get into those resources more later because this podcast is to fill those gaps. When people have questions, to interact with our lives on a daily basis, that's what this podcast is for.
Right.
And so we want to kind of share our story with you, share our history with you, share our life with you, and help you kind of along the way. Yeah. Well, also I wanted to mention we're starting another book that's coming out here soon called Before the Day Ends. It's the second edition of that, which is a set of devotions and a set of reflections. So that'll be available really, really soon. So we're looking forward to that too.
We also have a couple of other things. We have 3 children's books that are very sweet. And actually, one of them, Rosie and the Rattling Cup, is a true story about my daughter Abigail and her dad. And that's kind of what started Purpose Press. And then Abigail has also created this beautiful women's journal as well. So those things we're going to talk about on another podcast just to kind of show you what we have available and what they're used for. But wanted just to let you know that we do want to continue to create tools for deeper Bible study.
Yeah, one thing we're seeing, and I'm sure a lot of you who are listening to this have heard this, is that Bible sales are up. People are returning to church, which is fantastic. And one of our goals is to provide resources that help people have a trusted source where they can go to, ask questions, learn how to read the Bible, learn how they can explore the Bible for themselves, and kind of share our journey with you. And that's kind of what this whole purpose is of Purpose Press. And so this podcast, we hope that you'll follow, you'll subscribe, you'll like, you'll tell your friends, and interact with us. Ask us questions. Help us to help you in your faith journey with Jesus as well. Stacy, last words? You always have the last word. Just FYI.
Yes, sure. Well, what do we want to tell them?
Okay, so
why don't you be the second to the last word?
I get to the second last word. Okay, the second last word is this. So our next podcast will be on, is the Bible trustworthy? And I think you'll really enjoy that because it really is where we start. Like when we sit down and read the Bible, how do you know that we have what was written? How do we know that what was written is what happened? How do we know that the translations that we have are accurate? And what should we do if we don't think they are? And how do we, because I've even seen online recently people saying, oh, there's a verse missing in the gospel or something like that. And there's reasons for that. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. But we want to give you resources to help you read the Bible, to help you understand the Bible, and give you some confidence that when you open those pages, that God's going to be speaking to you in some really, really powerful ways. Okay, now, what's the last line? What's the last thing you want to say?
The last thing. Let's see. How about like and subscribe, invite all your friends, and we'll see what we encounter on the trail.
All right, we'll see you on the trail. Take care.